So I'd love to kind of explore now the changing labour markets and the future of work. So we're starting on that theme of around, is an unconventional career really an unconventional career nowadays, or is it going to be the norm in the future? Obviously, COVID and the economic impacts of the last 12 months have created different environments for university students that are leaving university now and exploring what are the different paths they're wanting to go down. And there's a lot more pressure on them to jump into the job market from financial reasons as well. I'd love to just take a moment and hear from each of you how the last 12 months has impacted your business and your ventures. So what has it been really positive, or have you gone through challenging times, and what have you learnt from that? And just kind of open up the conversation around what's the current market that you're kind of working in at the moment, and what are you facing as a founder? Will, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. So, for an alcohol company, we've got a relatively broad business in that we manufacture spirits. We do all our own distribution too. So when we take it from manufacturing through sales and marketing to actually, getting it to the retailer and direct to consumer via e-com. We've also got a cocktail bar. So we're in hospitality as well. Pre-COVID, we were doing about 2,200 events a year around the country. So we had a full-on sort of events business. And COVID hit. And the other context here is that my wife and I had our first child on the 9th of April last year. So there was a lot going on, but COVID hit, and basically over the course of a month, the government shut down hospitality. So the bar was forced to close. So we had 16 full-time staff with nowhere to work. I won't give you the whole chronological run through, but we basically in that same week, in 7 days, went from idea to launching hand sanitizer, which is not the easiest thing to do. Particularly because we were ahead of the changes in the regulation. So we had to go to the ATO to get a federal permission to manufacture a non-excisable ethanol-based product, and we had to change all our insurances, and we had to change all our freight so we could ship dangerous goods, and there was a lot to do. But in that week, we started making hand sanitizer, offered everyone in the bar work in the warehouse, so we maintained full employment through the whole period. We then lost all our duty-free sales in about a week. And then I had to go have a baby. Well, not have me personally have a baby, but have a baby. So look, it was really difficult. I think the thing that, I'll say one thing and then I'll sort of talk about what it did, but it just made us focus. I use my email as sort of the to-do list, I guess, and I've got a folder for every day of the week, like Monday through Sunday, and at the start of the week, I put stuff in the folders. When COVID hit, I just cleared out the folders. I just took all the emails and just went, no, mate, none of that's happening until we figure out what the hell's going on here. And we got the team together and we just focused and said, look, we got to figure out how to do this hand sanitizer thing, because we can't have 16 people out of a job. And so we figured that out. We solved that problem. The biggest issue after regulation was supply. There was a 9-month lead time on bottles in Australia. There was no ethanol being delivered to anyone that wasn't a major customer over a certain threshold and hadn't been a customer. There's only 3 ethanol suppliers in Australia. Supply was tough, and then we solved that problem. And then we had everyone with work and getting paid. And then we gradually looked at how things were going to evolve. Hospitality was the hardest hit. Spirits then changed. So duty-free was gone. Sales to on-premise, so bars, restaurants, hotels, was down. Sales to off-premise increased substantially in bottle shops. Web sales increased substantially, and the mix of products also changed. And so where we ended up was we actually managed to have a really strong year and exceed all of our targets for that year, albeit at the time we didn't know what was going to happen. And I think, to wrap it up, what COVID really did for us was it forced us to focus. We've only been around 6 years, and it's been 6 great years. And this is another story which I won't tell, but I remember having conversations with my dad before I started this. And, nothing bad has happened. We've had 6 great years. We've never had any problems. And people say, oh, well, talk about your challenges and this and that. We've definitely had bad times, but I don't know why. I don't really remember them that well. But it's been great, and this was the first tough thing, and it forced us to focus, and it forced us to reflect, and we actually had to, put some really hard work in, not that we haven't in the past, but to get through this. And I think it's made us a much stronger company, significantly stronger company. I actually think that, where we are now, and we've got relatively the same team, is just such a better place. And I'm so much more confident now about our ability to deal with real problems and understand what's important and focus and just, deliver on what we need to deliver on.
So the to use an overused word from last year, the pivot into hand sanitizer, and working through those challenges as a business really helped you come out more strongly from what you went through in the last year.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say the hand sanitizer as a specific product was the thing that made the difference, but it was reacting to that issue, and also just understanding the human impact. Because as you were saying, Craig, like it's one thing for me to be sitting there going, okay, I got to figure out how to not have this business die, but the majority of people in the business were just going, I wonder if I'm going to have a job, you know. And it's not they don't care about the business, but you got to care about whether you're going to have a job. And so it was really interesting for me to understand how important all the communications were, and what we were saying to which people, at what time, in what format. Like that was something that, again, you know, and it hasn't all been like great every day, but generally speaking, the past 6 years have been great. And so when you've got that, you've got so much more leeway to do things the wrong way and just, we'll figure it out. And I think that it was being forced to reconsider how the business is going to survive and then pick back up in a landscape for alcohol which is very, very different. There's still no duty-free sales. There's no airports trading. That's what was really, really important for us. And I think that it's, you know, I almost am loath to say this because I know it's been so difficult for so many people, but it's almost the best thing that's happened to us as a business, forcing us to get stronger. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. It sounds like it's been a good year.
Yeah.
Craig, how about you? What was 2020 for you?
Yeah, I mean, look, I sort of need to answer that question at the AirTree level, but probably more interestingly in the companies that we've backed, you know, at the portfolio level. So there's 55 companies there. And I guess, you know, I've seen a few downturns before. So I guess our job as investors and board members is to sort of call early and say, look, this is bad, we need to do something. And so, you know, when it happened, it was like, there was a lot of actually communication and going around the tech community before the government even got onto the issue. So we're ahead of this issue about lobbying the government to need to do something. So I think we were right ahead of the curve in early March, actually. And then it was obvious, you know, we had a problem, and each company had its own journey. And so, but mostly it was something like, we've got a problem, we need to get together, we need to have, you know, plan A, B, C, D, E in a very uncertain environment. We need to look after humans, we need to communicate well to everybody, we need to act like good humans through this, you know, dark time. And so that I mean, that's kind of what we do, but I think it really galvanized a lot of teams. I think then at AirTree level, we ran a lot of events. Actually, we had a weekly event it started off with a COVID event where founders would share just war stories or how do you communicate. And at one point, you know, for companies that were letting staff go, were giving them to people who need to hire more just to try and give people jobs continuity across companies. It was really awesome to see cooperation amongst companies. So I think there's a real sense of community and camaraderie came out of that. But wind the clock forward, and it's way better than we would have thought. And it's embarrassing to say, like, technology's been the net winner out of this for the most part. Most companies are well ahead of their even best plan. So those weekly startup events we're running turn into what's called slingshot events. So how do we slingshot out of this thing when it turns around? And you know, we're in the business of trying to invest with a 3, 5, 10-year horizon. Well, what was going to take 5 years took 5 months. You know, in telehealth, education, e-commerce, it's just happened overnight. So, in some ways, it's brought the future forward for most of our companies, not all. So now it's more about how do you sort of ride this incredible wave you're on, which is at the same time recognizing that we are very, very, very lucky to be in technology and in Australia and so yeah.
Yeah, agreed. We experienced a similar sense of community and camaraderie across our client group. We got a lot of our clients together and created a network of, you know, human capital or people and culture executives getting together on a regular basis to share how they were responding. And we certainly saw a lot of them make the most of those new connections that were formed through virtual and support each other. So definitely a strong sense of community. Nicole, what about you? What was 2020 like for you, and was it an enabler or a disruptor for your business?
At first, it was something we were pretty worried about. I'm not going to lie. My co-founder and I, it was just us, and I think we had a third full-timer. So it was really only 3 full-time staff. We'd only really started working on Advocate full-time about a year ago. And then this pandemic hit, and we're thinking, right, what does this mean? Is this just going to be a total dead end? We could tell that the focus from the government level, policy level, was obviously was a health one. It was a health one at first, and then it became an economic one. And so all our customers were hearing were that, unless you're knocking on the door for something that's going to, help solve the health crisis or rebuild the economy, we don't really want to talk to you. And so, we really wondered what the impact for government relations and advocacy was going to be like that year. But fast forward a few months into it, and it turned out that conversely, because of the work from home situation, a lot of these teams who had traditionally collaborated in the office or by email, they were increasingly looking at ways to keep in touch with their colleagues across the government relations and public affairs teams, but media teams and comms teams more than ever. And so for us, 2020 became quite it actually was one of our best years for that reason, that people were thinking more about, firstly, how can they better communicate and collaborate online for an industry that traditionally has been very face-to-face. Yep. And it also forced us to think about what else we could do in terms of the product to meet the needs of the new world order, where people were having fewer face-to-face meetings. They weren't looking for a software solution to just take notes and share info with their colleagues. They actually needed to see what MPs were saying online and social media. And so we started pulling in all this interesting information from the outside world into the app, and made it a bit more COVID appropriate, COVID friendly, but ultimately something that's been really helpful long after the worst of last year. So because it was a good year, lots of learnings, a bit of a pivot, hate to use the word, but overall, it was good for the team. We doubled in revenue, doubled in team size, so one of the lucky ones.
Absolutely. So it sounds like great opportunity came out for all of you across the businesses that you're supporting, as well as AirTree and your own companies in 2020. So use the opportunity of the crisis to turn something positive from that. Obviously, the economy has taken a bit of a beating in the past 12 months. What are some of the other forces that you're seeing from where you sit shaping the workforce and the labour market at the moment?
What are some of the, I think in our world, I think it's more disruption. The pace of disruption is happening faster than before, and so I think it's more about the incumbents now, looking at whether you're a bank or a retailer or even government, defence, even to sort of non-traditional areas. I think that we are seeing like little ants of disruptive ants crawling around these things. We see it early. I think the big sort of incumbents may not see it coming as fast as they think, because they're coming out of this downturn. Everyone's feeling pretty good about things, I'd imagine, and I think that chapter hasn't been written yet.
So the pace of change is really...
Pace of change always outstrips what people think, but I think it's going even faster now.
Yeah.
And there's always winners and losers out of that, and I think the winners will be people who are moving fast or adaptive, this conversation. The losers will be people who just want it like it was before, and that's not going to happen.
A return to the old.
Yeah.
Cool. Will, what do you think?
Look, again, within our industry, I think what's interesting is how remote working because as you were saying, Craig, it forced everyone to get digital in whatever way that meant, right? But I don't know what the stats are on e-com shopping with all the demographics, but I know that my parents shop online now all the time, and previously they didn't like doing that. And I think going back to workforce, for us there's this split, because fundamentally we're a manufacturer. There's a bunch of jobs in our business where you have to come to work. You can't do that remotely. Like, you need to be in the factory, and you need to make spirits, you need to pack spirits, you need to be at the bar, you need to serve drinks, And so there's this interesting sort of dichotomy between the part of our workforce who, I don't want to say will always, but at least at the moment, has to be there to manufacture products or serve customers at frontline hospitality versus those staff who could work remotely. And I think particularly in recruitment, it's where we're seeing more of a shift. Because funnily enough, the majority of our existing team still wants to be there. Now that part of that is because I guess our office is at the distillery too, and most of the people that work there, literally they want to smell and touch and, you know, taste the spirits. That's what they love. But as we're recruiting, you're seeing a lot more people applying for roles in areas geographically where there's no, they're not going to be able to come to work 5 days a week. And it's starting to become almost assumed when you're applying for new roles. And even, you know, to go off topic a bit, but my wife's applying for roles at the moment. And yeah, I mean, it's almost like you don't even have to have the conversation. You're applying for a company that's based in Melbourne, and people just, they don't even sort of go, well, you're in Sydney and we're in Melbourne. It's just, that's what it is.
So that hybrid working pattern that people got into last year is now an assumption that you're seeing in new employment.
Exactly. It's becoming just this almost predetermined, that's how you start a conversation.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you might talk about the logistics of how it's going to work or the sort of specifics around timing and things like that. But I think that's something that has really changed. And probably a negative of that is it's increased the divide between those workers who do need to be on site and those workers who don't necessarily. And I wouldn't say that this is something that we're facing really directly, but it's certainly something that we're just seeing a little shift towards. And so we're now having to think about how we can maintain that sort of one team vibe. Because you already have those issues around timing. Like for example, we run 2 shifts in production from 6 till 2 and 2 till 10, right? And then in the bar, they obviously trade through till midnight, depending on what day of the week. And so there'll be some, and over a 7-day roster, there'll be some people that just never work together, even though the shifts just don't align. And so when you throw into the mix then as well, some have to be on site and some don't have to be on site, I think maintaining that one team vibe is going to become a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. What we're seeing across the markets that we're supporting, connection is becoming the biggest problem that organisations need to solve for. How do you maintain innovation, collaboration and human connection if people are working, you know, part in the office, part out of the office? You're losing those incidental moments, and things are becoming a lot more scheduled and you know, harder to get things done because you're not spending that time together. So I think connection is going to be a huge theme, managing that hybrid workforce and the pace of change for organisations. And equipping new graduates into that, it's a very different scenario. If you think of a new graduate, you know, starting a job behind a desk, not actually walking into an organisation and being part of a team. They're working in their home environment. I think that's a really interesting theme that influence that our new graduates are going to need.
I feel like the graduates though are going to be the most well adapted to it. I almost think the bigger challenge is with the management, so to speak, to just bundle a whole group of people who are doing the onboarding and who are, you know, integrating them into the business. And I almost think that the graduates are coming in with more sort of inbuilt native skills and comfort with this new way of working, and the problem that they're facing is more around the businesses that they're joining not being set up to
support them. Yeah, absolutely.
But I agree with that. But I think it's what it's doing is forcing businesses, and you must see this, you know, to be much tighter on onboarding and connections, communications, engineering, serendipity. What does a virtual water cooler question look like? You know, I mean, every business is trying to work through these things, and we'll get to a better answer there, I think.